Hey guys, Mrs. Woodrow Rosenberg here. Today we're going to look at our first PSAT assessment, The Nature of the Future, Dispatches from the Social Structured World. And I want to go over with you some effective pre-reading strategies that could help you when you're working with a text like this. And so the first thing I want to do when my teacher gives me something like this is sit down and look at it. And so I want to establish, what is my purpose for reading? Why am I doing this? So I'm going to look it over. I'm going to flip from the first page to the second page, and then finally to the last page. In the last two pages, I notice that there's questions. So my purpose for reading is to answer these questions. This is a little bit different than if my teacher let me choose a book to read about, or if I was reading a magazine, because I'm reading to find specific information, not just for fun. So I've established my purpose for reading. The next thing I like to do personally, before I look for text features or pre-read the questions, I like to read the directions. The reason I like to actually look at the directions is because sometimes there's specific instructions or special requirements, as some people like to call them, in the directions that the author or the teacher might ask me to do. So I want to look at the directions first to make sure there's nothing special about answering these questions. For example, maybe sometimes on a true-false test, the teacher wants you, instead of writing true or false, to put a plus or a minus. So I just want to inspect the instructions and make sure there's nothing funky happening, that all I have to do is answer the questions. So as I look over here, it says questions 10 through 19 are based on the following passage and supplementary material. So it's just telling me the questions are based on this passage. So there's nothing funky, so I don't have to, look out for any special requirements. So that's good to go. The next thing I do is I think I'm going to skim over the passage and look for some text features. Now, I can honestly tell you right away when I looked at this, the minute I opened this, I was like, ugh. As I skimmed it, as things popped out at me and as I go through and point them out to you, this did not look exciting to me. But what I did notice is I did notice that already the paragraphs were numbered for me. Which was very helpful. So the author numbered the paragraphs. I noticed that there's a graph at the bottom, so that they kind of added a picture to kind of break up some of the monotony of the reading. I also noticed that right above the graph, there's a statement, and it says, I'm going to highlight this. It says the following graph from a 2011 report from the International Data Corporation predicts trends in digital information digital information use to 2015. And these are estimates, okay? So this is telling me this graph is about trends in digital information use. As I look down, it says global digital information created and shared 2005 to 15. Over here, digital information created and shared, and it says something about zettabytes. I have no idea what a zettabyte is, but thank God it's a graph, because pictures are much easier to read than if I had to read all about that. Note 1 zettabyte equals 1 trillion gigabytes. That still doesn't mean anything to me, but I'm thankful that there is some kind of a key down here, because I know what trillion is. I don't know what a zettabyte is, but I guess it's something to do with 1 trillion gigabytes. So at any rate, there's a picture, and I know from looking at this graph that this article is probably going to have something to do with digital information or something along that lines. It says project trends in digital information. So this is going to have something to do with digital information. This is not something I'm interested in reading about. I don't care about digital information unless I'm reading an article online. But I still have to answer these questions, and I still have to read this for meaning. So I'm going to kind of take a minute before I scan through and look for some other text features. And I'm going to kind of say a positive comment to myself, because I know right away in my head, this looks like it sucks. I don't want to read it, but I have to. And I have to go in with a positive attitude, so I have a focus, and I can answer the questions to the best of my ability and maximize my points. So I'm going to kind of sit here for a minute and just kind of say a positive affirmation in my head. I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to answer all the questions. So I'm going to just say something positive and realistic so that I can keep my focus. And if I start to lose focus while I'm reading during the reading portion, I can come back to this and get back on track. I won't fall asleep. I won't get discouraged. Okay. So I know that it's probably going to be about some digital information based on the caption from the graph. Now I'm going to skim through and see if I see anything, any other text features. Like I said, I already knew that the paragraphs were numbered, thank God, so I don't have to do it myself. As I skim over this, I didn't notice any words that are italicized or in bold. But I do notice a couple things. I notice right away, I see some proper nouns. I see something about the Soviet Union in the 1960s, so that's going to have something to do with countries. As I skim and scan some more, I see, oh, there's Soviet again. Okay. I'm also noticing as I'm looking around that I'm seeing that the word networks. I see networks here. That's repeated again down here. So something about Soviets and networks. As I keep going and I keep looking, sorry about that. As I keep going and I keep looking over this, today, oh, I've noticed something about, I see the word economics. Okay, I also, as I skim, I see economic again. So sometimes before you read and you're skimming and scanning, you're just looking it over, you're going to see things, words that are repeated. That's also a good text feature to look at, because before you even get started, it will give you a gist, or it might help you make some predictions about what you're reading. And especially since I said this is super boring to me personally, I need as many things to help me as possible to stay focused and cue in and answer these questions. So I notice I keep skimming and scanning. I see economic. I see something. I see they mentioned technologies, and I know that I'd read that in my caption. There's economic again. Okay, good. Oh, I see the country Brazil. So there's another country they mentioned. So I already know 2 different countries are here. Oh, India, another country, another proper noun. So countries, technologies, economics. I'm skimming and scanning some more. I see down here the word economy. So there again, we keep talking about financial stuff. Economic again. As I skim and scan, I'm looking some more. Social structuring, what does that mean? I don't know, but I'm sure I'll learn. Oh, technologies again. So there again, technologies, countries, and the economy. So it keeps going. Okay. I see some guys' names here. I don't know if they're important, but they are proper nouns. So it's going to mention some guys. I don't know if it's going to talk about some things that they've done or reference something that they're doing, but I'm going to keep skimming and scanning. And the last thing I see, oh, I see technology again. So after skimming and scanning, just looking over this passage and looking at some of the text features, the numbering of the paragraphs, words that were repeated, proper nouns, information from this graph down here, I'm going to make some predictions. And basically, I'm thinking before I read this has to do with technology and the economy in some countries. And of course, we knew digital information. So based on this information, I'm going to predict to myself that this is most likely a nonfiction article, because it doesn't sound like a story. Oh, look, as I'm sitting here, I see the word global economy again, one that I missed when I was skimming and scanning. That just better supports my prediction. They're talking about global economies, digital information. This sounds like nonfiction to me, so I'm going to predict that this is an informational text. Okay. So as I go through, I'm going to, now that I've kind of skimmed and scanned my reading, I just want to pre-read my questions quickly. You know, some people say not to do that. I'm from the old school. I say pre-read the questions, because honestly, it can't hurt. And sometimes when you're reading, you'll be like, oh, I read that in the question, and you can underline text or highlight text that you might need to pull for textual evidence while you're in the paragraph. So I'm just going to quickly read over this. My first question says, as used in line 10, plot most nearly means. Okay, Well, something I noticed right here is it's asking me about a paragraph. So I know that when I get to this question, I need to specifically go back to line 10. So I'm going to highlight that so I remember, oh yeah, I got to go back to line 10. Okay. The next question, the references to the shoemaker, the programmer, and the apple farmer in line. Oh, there again, they're going to have me look lines 37 through 40. So I'm going to highlight that. And you could have underlined that or highlighted that on your paper as well, just so I know that that's specifically where I'm going to go back to. Because I have no interest in reading this, and because as I skim and scanned, I don't care about economics, and I surely don't, I'm not thrilled about like that technology. I want to hear about cool technology. So I'm going to need to stay focused. So if when I go back to this question after reading that whole boring thing, if I can say, oh yeah, the answer to my question's in line 37 through 40, that will cue me just to go right back there. I don't have to go ahead and like reread the question 80,000 times. I know I'm looking for this information in line 37 through 40. I can go right there. Okay. Number 3, it says the passage's discussion of life in the Soviet Union's 1960s and 70s primarily serves to, okay. Oh, look, number 4, as used in line 45, post most nearly means. So that's going to be making using words in context, but I'm going back to line 45, so I'm going to highlight that so I can go right there. Number 5, the author indicates that in comparison to individuals, traditional organizations have tended to be, okay. Number 6, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? I'm going to make a little arrow here. So I know, whoops, well, you get the, whoops, you get the point. But let's see if it'll let me. Yay! I'm going to make an arrow so I know that these two go together. Okay, so I know once I'm answering that, if I go back to these lines, if I go back to one of these answers, the textual evidence will be there. This might also help you if you are answering this question right here. If you're answering number 5 and you're like, I don't know if it's A or B. Looking at the textual evidence might help you narrow in on the best answer because it gives you specific lines down here. So when you're actually reading the text, that might help you. So I like to put a little arrow or a little connector to let me know when 2 questions are connected. Okay. Number 7, the author recognizes counter arguments to the position she takes in the passage by. 8, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to previous question? Excuse me, not equation. There again, I'm going to make a little arrow because those questions go together. Okay. Finally, number 9, which statement best summarizes the information presented in the graph? And finally, according to the graph, which statement is true about the amount of digital information projected to be created and shared globally in 2012? Great. So I've gone ahead and I've used some pre-reading strategies. I went ahead and I skimmed and scanned the passage. I read the directions. I set up my purpose for reading. I looked for text features. I looked at words, proper nouns. I looked at repeated words. I looked at the graph and the caption, the titles, and the little key that goes along with the graph. And I pre-read my questions. And within my questions, I highlighted and I noted some things to help me better answer the questions. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful.